Just explain to us what it is that she's done.
The scale of corruption in South Africa is staggering. When she was the mayor of Polokwane, she entered into a what she calls a loan with a fellow who has now been debarred and fined for all kinds of nefarious and dodgy dealings with VBS to purchase a coffee shop in Sandton. That should concern everybody, and it should concern her. But now she's the Minister of Justice, and she's being investigated by the Hawks, and it's a prosecutor-led investigation. And so the NPA is involved, and she sits at the top of the pyramid of the criminal justice system. That's why she cannot be, at the moment, the Justice Minister. If she's exonerated, mazel tov, wonderful. Go right ahead, come back, do the job. No problem. And if you vacate the position under these circumstances, in order for justice to run its course, you come back with your integrity intact. There's no harm done. But under these circumstances, when you cling, like a burr, it's unbecoming to do so. That doesn't help anybody. It detracts from the credibility of the criminal justice system. It detracts from her own.
Guys, Advocate Breytenbach is not in the mood for smiles at this moment because she's extremely angry with the president's position on the case with Justice Minister Simelane and her attachment to a loan and the VBS scandal that actually rocking the entire nation at the moment. So, according to a recent report from the presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya, he actually says that there is no evidence that the revelations about Justice Minister Simelane's past financial transactions have had any impact on the functioning of the department. And I'm sure this is the statement that actually made Advocate Breytenbach extremely angry, where she's really claiming that the scale of corruption in South Africa is unbelievable, and she's really not able to understand how this country still functions. Let's listen to how she breaks down what's the whole framing of this Justice Minister Simelane's case right now with VBS, and how the case is, where the case is at the moment, and why she's really angry with the way the president is treating this case. And I'll be back for some really interesting analysis on why she's really angry and where the case with Justice Minister Simelane's VBS scandal is at the moment.
People who have courage and who are able to stand up for what is right here in South Africa. And right now, you're on a mission with your counterpart, I suppose, the Justice Minister, Thembi Simelane. Just explain to us what it is that she's done, in a nutshell, that we should all be concerned about.
Ms. Simelane has done a couple of things that are a little dodgy that should concern us all. When she was the mayor of Polokwane, she entered into a what she calls a loan with a fellow who has now been debarred and fined for all kinds of nefarious and dodgy dealings with VBS. At the time, he was also a service provider to the Polokwane municipality and had facilitated loans or investments from the municipality to VBS, for which he, of course, received, I suppose he'll say it was commission, but it's really just a kickback. And at the time, she was the mayor, and immediately after the money from the let's call it an investment, to be polite, it's still early, immediately the funds flowed into VBS. She also then received this loan. It's not a huge amount of money in real terms. It's just over $500,000. For most of us, that's an enormous amount of money. But in the general scheme of the kind of fraud and theft that goes on in this country, it's a drop in the ocean. Of which there was no fixed term of repayment. Nothing. It was on sort of a very wishy-washy, iffy kind of a deal to purchase a coffee shop in Sandton, which she then did. The repayment only started when the investigation into VBS and the various financial dealings started, and then was repaid with great alacrity in two installments, 2 or 3 installments. So, that's he was not a financial service provider. VBS was not a commercial bank; it was a mutual bank. Being in the loaning of money business was not the business of this fellow. And in fact, he made only 2 loans, and one was to her. Now she says she repaid it with interest in those 2 astonishingly quick installments 4 years later. And this coffee shop has since, I think it's been sold. It's certainly not operating at the moment. The minister tells us that the loan was above board, is an arm's length. She's got all the documentation. She's yet to produce it despite being asked to do so. She's been asked to produce proof of repayment, which she hasn't really done. Daily Maverick has gotten hold of the documents, and they look very, very dodgy, and certainly on the face of it appear to be backdated. And but the fact of the matter is, apart from that dodgy dealing, where of course there was a conflict of interest when you're the mayor and your municipality is investing, and then you get a loan from the service provider on that kind of a basis where you don't have to repay for the next however many years. That should concern everybody, and it should concern her. But now she's the Minister of Justice, and she's being investigated by the Hawks, and it's a prosecutor-led investigation. And so the NPA is involved, and she sits at the top of the pyramid of the criminal justice system. So, she says, I give an undertaking, I won't interfere, and the investigation will run its course. Well, we've seen this movie before. We saw this movie with the DSO. When they went after politicians, they got closed down. Vusi Bikoli lost his job because he insisted on proceeding with the prosecution against Jackie Salebi, who was convicted. It's no good to say, I won't do this or I won't do that. A, nobody can believe you, however much you may or may not mean it. But B, there's an enormous, glaring, slap in the face conflict of interest here that just doesn't do our very fragile criminal justice system any good. And if she had any integrity, she would step aside of her own volition. But if she's not going to do that, and clearly she isn't, then the president should, fire her, frankly.
If anyone read Terry Matau's report on VBS, which came out a few years ago, this was a common practice, Glynis. It's not that they found her. There were many municipalities who had to, well, not had to, but who were incentivized to put money into VBS because it was a Ponzi scheme anyway. And amongst them was Capricorn, which Paulie van Wyk wrote a fantastic story about a lady called Mariette Venter, and how she had stepped in to try and stop it. And the minute she went on leave, the mayor, Gilbert Ganyago, actually made sure that the loan went through, in inverted commas, or the deposit went through. So it's a bit incredulous, I guess, if you know the facts. And from your perspective, and this is really a question I've been dying to ask you, you're a public prosecutor, you were from the NPA, you've gone into politics where the nuances are just sometimes, those of us from outside of politics just shake our heads. How are you managing to cope with all of this?
Well, 26 years in the criminal justice system certainly either kills you or makes you stronger. It certainly made me stronger. So nothing surprises one anymore, and you don't. The courts are not a place for sissies. So this kind of thing is every day. It's common practice in South Africa. It's staggering. It's the scale of corruption in South Africa is staggering. But we have to start somewhere. And so we have to just keep on chipping away at this massive, massive edifice of corruption. And one by one, dealing with them. It will take the rest of my natural life, and probably a lot of other people's too. But we have to start somewhere. We cannot give up.
If you were still at the National Prosecuting Authority, would you have a strong enough case to level against the Justice Minister, Thembi Simelane, on the evidence that you've seen?
That's very difficult to say because I haven't seen any original evidence. So I've seen what what Paulie has published, and please believe me, I have the highest regard for Paulie and the work that she does. She does phenomenal work. And so I have no reason to doubt the veracity of what she's done, but I haven't seen any original documentation. Prosecutors are dealing with original documentation, and they have a lot more. I mean, they have the ability to, that Pody doesn't have, to subpoena bank statements, to subpoena cell phone records, to really dig into the shady forensics of the matter. So it's hard for me to say on the face of what there is now that there's enough to prosecute. It certainly looks like it, and I'm a kind of a seat of your pants prosecutor. I quite enjoyed being in court and in the arena, so I didn't really concern myself with crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. If there was enough, there was enough, and I went ahead. It usually worked. But given that they're understaffed, under-resourced, seriously, and that the police are equally, even more, in fact, understaffed and under-resourced, it may take them a little time to get, this matter to a head. But certainly this isn't a big matter. And there isn't a lot more that's outstanding than what we've already seen. And so I think they must be in a position to certainly make a decision in the very near future.
But it's a big matter if you're working there, because this is your boss that you're talking about. This is the minister in charge of the whole criminal justice system.
Yeah,
So
well, therein lies the rub. Therein lies the rub. That's why she cannot be, at the moment, the justice minister. If she's exonerated, mazel tov, wonderful. Go right ahead, come back, do the job. No problem. And if you vacate the position under these circumstances, in order for justice to run its course, you come back with your integrity intact. There's no harm done. But under these circumstances, when you cling, like a burr, it's unbecoming to do so. That doesn't help anybody. It detracts from the credibility of the criminal justice system. It detracts from her own integrity. It detracts from absolutely everything. And of course, the prosecutors are aware of the fact that she's the Minister of Justice. We all know what happened the last time a prosecutor pissed off the Minister of Justice when Vusi Pikoli upset Bridget Mabandla. He lost his job.
Well, DA spokesperson on justice.
Yeah, interesting, guys. So I found a really interesting report from Polly Van Wyk. I think, Polly Van Wyk is the popular investigative journalist from Daily Maverick that actually, I think she has actually spearheaded this fight against the VBS scandal. She was the one that really broke down, using infographics, the attachment of the VBS issue with Floyd Shivambu's brother and the whole thing with the EFF that actually shook the nation. And now she's going deeply now into this Justice Minister, Simelane, where Advocate Breytenbach argues that if it's another country, for example, maybe like a Western country or maybe like the US, if a justice minister is at the helm of this kind of corrupt allegation, that she would just step down or probably be fired by the president. But that's not really happening, and it appears, according to her, she feels that the president is actually protecting, so to speak, or kind of like having a certain position on this matter that is not probably with the strength that she expects the president to take it on. So this report from Polly Van Wyk on Daily Maverick actually explains, why this matter is really taken really seriously by Advocate Breytenbach, and why she sounds really angry and really hot on this issue. So it actually appears that, we all know that, Justice Minister Thembi Simelane is actually, in hot water, because it appears that she took a loan from VBS, the same VBS that was, argued that, it kept money of Gogos in South Africa, and that, she took a loan from VBS to buy a coffee shop or a coffee, outlet, so to speak. And that loan, according to Advocate Breytenbach, wasn't legal in her own words, or in the way she framed it, that it was sort of like not a legally acquired loan, in that there were multiple problems regarding that loan. So right now, Polly Van Wyk actually goes deeper to really help us understand why the justice minister being at the helm of affairs and taking a loan from VBS to buy a coffee shop really was problematic from her perspective. So it says that South Africa's financial institutions watchdog has actually found the VBS corruption accused Ralium Razwinane. He didn't offer financial services honestly, fairly, and with due skill and care, and also with due diligence. All right. So the whole foundation of this whole issue is the fact that an investigation by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, FSCA, into the whole VBS corruption accused Ralium Razwinane. He actually found that Razwinane is actually a financial advisor, right? So this investigation found that he contravened a long list of legislation and financial services conduct rules when he cajoled Polokwane local municipality and also the community schemes ombudsman service into investing hundreds of millions of rands into the VBS bank. So in other words, the accusation was the fact that this financial advisor, Ralium Razwinane, actually cajoled the Polokwane municipality, to which Tembi Simelane at the time, I think she was mayor or something, and that, because of the fact that the background behind how he convinced the Polokwane community to invest into the VBS scandal was problematic. For Simelane now to go into that bank to take those loans, at the time, to then buy a coffee shop, that actually appears the grounds for why her case, especially her case as attached to the VBS scandal, is really problematic. And Van Wyk helps us to understand deeply. So it says that the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, accordingly, it debarred this financial advisor Razwinane for 10 years and actually imposed a penalty on him for 3 million rand. It means that Razwinane is prohibited from providing financial services to individuals or companies, and he may not act as a key person, such as a director or senior manager of a financial institution. So if this was done, if he was actually debarred for 10 years and he was actually imposed a 3 million rand penalty at the time, which he wasn't even supposed to be acting as a financial advisor, he wasn't supposed to be acting as a key person or a senior manager, then it must have been problematic for him to have been the one behind, disbursing or probably advising, for investment into the VBS bank or disbursal of loans to Justice Minister Tembi Simelane. So it goes that Justice Minister Tembi Simelane then notoriously, according to this report, it uses the word notoriously, took a highly questionable loan from Razwinane's Gundo Wealth Solutions in 2016 to buy a coffee shop in Santon, while she was mayor of Polokwane. So this is where the whole problem lies, okay? It says that she claimed that Gundo was her financial advisor and money lender, even though it was not in the money lending business. Gundo, in the meantime, has been liquidated because it could not repay its ill-gotten gains to VBS curator Anush Ruplal, all right? Now, the FSCA investigation came about this investigation because Razwinane advised Polokwane municipality and the Community Schemes Ombudsman Service, CSOS, to invest surplus funds of up to 349 million rand and also 80 million rands, respectively, into VBS Mutual Bank in 2016 and 2017. Now, the report argues that Polokwane is actually one of those municipalities in Limpopo that actually retrieved its entire investment from VBS before VBS imploded by March of 2018, all right? Now, it says that a 2018 investigation by this advocate, Terry Motao, and also a law firm called Wexman actually found that VBS turned out to be a Ponzi scheme-like scam, and when the bank predictably recorded a liquidity crisis, subsequently, it then probed and the liquidity crisis now exposed Razwinane's series of unlawful dealings, all right? Now, some of these unlawful dealings include inappropriate advice, which circumvented the Public Finance Management Act, the Municipal Finance Management Act, as well as the Treasury regulations. And the FCSA said on the 16th of October that this is actually the whole allegation against Razwinane at the time. So VBS, being a mutual bank, all right, it occupies a lightly regulated corner of the banking industry and was not allowed to bank institutions like municipalities and also CSOS. So crucially, Razwinane's advice now ignored these clients' risk profiles and financial investments needs, according to the FCSA investigation, meaning that Razwinane contravened the General Code of Conduct for authorized financial services providers and also their representatives. Also, this same Raswinane at the time, because it's really important to understand why the attachment and the connection between Thembi Simelane and this Raswinane is actually problematic. And this is the position I think most advocates and lawyers and probably Breytenbach is actually coming from, all right? Because it appears that the loan with which Thembi Simelane at the time, although she's actually saying that she paid the loan back, the Daily Maverick argues that there has not been, any kind of like proof for that. It actually also found out, I think, that the date that she said she took the loan was backdated. So there are just many issues. We'll get to that. But the reason why it's problematic, especially from the perspective of advocates in South Africa, is the fact that the guy with which the Justice Minister dealt with at this time had really questionable, positions within the financial services industry, I think in probably South Africa. And so that's why it appears that the Justice Minister Thembi Simelane's loan from VBS at the time really feels problematic. But so anyway, the report goes on to say that Raswinane also at the time did not offer financial services honestly, fairly, and also with due skill and with diligence. It says that he consequently failed to disclose to his clients the kickbacks received from VBS in return for him influencing Polokwane municipality and also the CSOS into investing in the bank. Now, remember that, Mayor of Polokwane at this time was Thembi Simelane. We have that Raswinane advised or probably convinced the Polokwane community municipality to invest in VBS Bank. And also VBS Bank now, according to this report, was established to be sort of like a Ponzi scheme, like sort of like arrangement. So that whole circle then having the mayor of Polokwane go and take a loan from the VBS Bank to then buy a coffee shop. This is where the whole problem with the Justice Minister is actually situated, all right? Now, the report now says that it seems that a clincher in Raswinane's fate was the fact that Raswinane failed to fully cooperate with investigators during the FSCA probe, and then that the Motau report found that Raswinane actually received an unlawful 24 million rand in cash and also in loans from VBS in return for cajoling state institutions into investing in the bank, all right? So it uses the word here, cajoling. Van Wyk actually speaks about that. This guy actually cajoled state institutions to invest in VBS Bank. And as a result, he received up to 24.2 million rand in cash and also in loans from VBS because of the fact that he went about, trying to really convince state institutions and other bodies to invest in VBS Bank. So this is probably why VBS then became popular and all that, because of this, moving around and convincing. So it says that all of this, according to the FSCA investigation, meant that Raswinane and Gundo no longer meet the fit and proper requirements relating to honesty and integrity, and also in contravention of the Financial Advisory and Intermediary Services Act. Hence, Raswinane received a 10-year debarment and 3 million rand fine. Now, according to a Daily Maverick investigation and also a News 24 investigation, it revealed that in August, Simelane, I think in August of 2016, Simelane took a 575,600 rand loan from Raswinane's Gundo, outfit in 2016 to buy Silvana's coffee shop in Sandton, as at this time she was mayor of Polokwane and Gundo was the municipality's financial advisor. Now, Daily Maverick says that their investigation proved that Raswinane used the unlawful kickbacks from VBS to pay for the coffee shop. So we see where the whole mess is. So the kickbacks which Raswinane received for convincing state institutions to invest in the mutual bank, what this report actually argues went up to 24.2 million rand. That kickback then appears to be what he now gave as part of a loan at the tune of 575,600 rand to Mayor of Polokwane municipality at the time, Justice Minister now, Thembi Simelane, to buy a coffee shop in Sandton. So that's why it actually, feels problematic to lawyers and advocates who are actually deciding to take this case up. So the report says that Justice Minister Simelane denied impropriety and that she maintained that there's no conflict of interest, not then when she took a loan from her municipality's service provider, and not now being Justice Minister and executive political head of the National Prosecuting Authority, which ought to view her as a suspect in its sprawling VBS case. And this is why Advocate Breytenbach is so angry because, according to the president's spokesperson, it's reported from the presidency's side that there's no evidence about let me put that clearly. It says that there's no evidence that the revelations about Justice Minister Simelane's past financial transactions have had any impact on the functionings of the Department of Justice in South Africa. So this is actually where the whole issue is. So Van Wyk now argues that according to Simelane's explanation is this. First of all, that she had a legitimate loan agreement with Gundo, and secondly, she claimed that she paid the money back, which Van Wyk says that there's no proof of that yet, and that also thirdly, that because of the fact that she wanted to have an investment as a coffee shop, outfit in South Africa, she called them racist banks. She said that racist banks declined to give her a loan, and that's why she turned to Gundo and also the whole thing with VBS. But anyway, now Van Wyk argues that, in a revelation that Daily Maverick and News 24 investigation found, it argues that the loan agreement was actually backdated and therefore likely to have been faked. And also, in terms of South African anti-corruption legislation, a loan under particular circumstances can qualify as a bribe and as a repayment of the money, and that does not nullify preceding misdeeds. All right, let me go again. It says, in terms of South African anti-corruption legislation, a loan can, under particular circumstances, qualify as a bribe, and repayment of the money does not nullify preceding misdeeds. So this is a foundational conditional statement that in South Africa, according to South Africa's anti-corruption regulations, a loan can actually be seen as a bribe in certain instances. And the fact that you paid back this bribe loan does not mean or does not nullify the preceding misdeeds. So this is a kind of like a conditional clause in the whole South African anti-corruption legislation. So then it now says that Simelane did not disclose to the public that she had already taken 2 loans from 2 commercial banks at the time. So this is the whole thing that actually blows Simelane's probably innocence as regards to this case, and also from the perspective of advocates in South Africa like Glenys Breytenbach. So now from the president's side, and this is why the likes of Glenys Breytenbach is really angry. It says that in an unrelated press conference on Wednesday afternoon, presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya actually said that, as things stand at the moment, that there's no evidence that the revelations about Justice Minister Simelane's past financial transactions have had any impact on the functioning of the department. In his words, in quote, there is no evidence of political interference whatsoever, at least to the president's knowledge. He also added that Simelane's controversy is a matter which is top of mind for President Ramaphosa, all right? And in taking his time to consider the matter, the president is well aware of the importance of the justice portfolio, and that the president is well aware of the importance of that portfolio being led by a minister that is above reproach, all right? Now, the president is also well aware of the overriding responsibility to maintain stability within the portfolio of justice in South Africa, and that this includes various agencies that form that portfolio. And so in taking his time, he is not discounting any of the major considerations that have been applied with respect to that portfolio. But as things stand now, there is no evidence to suggest that there is instability either in the department or in the agencies. And then he concludes by saying that, he's not suggesting that the president is waiting for evidence of instability in the department before he acts. This matter is actually at the top of the president's mind, and he's processing it and he's thinking about it, says Magwenya, and that he will deal with the matter quite soon. So this is why, it appears that Advocate Glenys Breytenbach is angry, because it appears that because of the fact that this person is at the helm of the affairs of justice, and we know that justice is actually one of the key elements that entails or kind of like frames the sovereignty of a nation state. Without justice, especially when you talk of democracy, there has to be independent judiciary institutions, independent parliament, and there has to be no evidence of capturing of these 2 pillars of democracy by the presidency in that regard, and that shows a really healthy democracy. So because of that, it appears that whenever it appears that whoever it is that is at the helm of affairs of justice in a nation does not or should not be attached to any of these corrupt or illegal kind of like attachments or scandal, so to speak. And so for the fact that the present Justice Minister Thembi Simelane is attached to a VBS scandal and is still functioning, you know, as Justice Minister in South Africa, Glenys Breytenbach thinks that it's absolutely wrong, that the president should have a strong stand, either to fire the Justice Minister or probably that she should step down. But that's not really happening. And she's really exploding, really angry, as you could hear from this, interview on her position with that and the position of South Africa in terms of corruption. So this is where the whole case with Justice Minister Thembi Simelane's case, VBS scandal case, is at the moment. Van Wyk and the guys at Daily Maverick seem to be taking the horn, the bull by the horn, in trying to really deep in and understand why this case is a problem and why probably South Africa should maybe not have such a Justice Minister at the helm of affairs of justice for South Africa. But anyway, I don't know, what do you guys think? Share your thoughts. Let's all learn together. Share your thoughts in the comments.